Wakefield. It's the Nolan Carr Night Show starring Nolan Carr. Inviting you to join Nolan and his guest this week, Adam Bernstein, to the program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan. And welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy that you are back finally for another edition. It's been a few weeks. We had a few malfunctions. Creatively, I guess that'd be a way of putting it. Anyways, regardless, without further ado, let's get right to the show. We have a great show for you planned today. So many, great questions for our guest today. So stay with us as we're right back from the edition of the Nolan Carr Night Show with yours truly. See you soon. And welcome back, everyone, to the show. I'm so happy you stayed with us through the commercial break. And yes, I know, as I said in the intro, voice crack, that it's been a while. It's been a few weeks. We had a few scheduling conflicts with guests, but we're back for another edition of the Nolan Carr Night Show here with yours truly, Nolan. Anyways, we got a great guest for you this week. He is the host of the Rhode Rumble podcast on YouTube, so check it out. He is the one and only, the marvelous Adam Bernstein. So check his podcast out at the end of this. Obviously, don't do it now. Don't leave. Please stay. But I'm so happy. So many great questions. I'm looking forward to this show. But without further ado, I should say, that was a bad way to end it. So anyways, we got a great show planned for you, but let's do a segment I like to call What Happened in the News with Nolan. Let's start off the news cycle here on the Nolan Carr Night Show. According to CNBC, the Pentagon has ordered U.S. airlines to help fly Afghanistan evacuees. Pentagon telling airlines to do this is like your mom telling you to play with the new neighbor boy because he has no friends, even though you don't want to do that. If I found the part-time social activist, I'm sorry, but it's true. I'm not trying to seem like anti-Peace Corps or whatever, but I think requiring Middle Easterners to experience a flight on Southwest is more painful than a female Afghani not being able to learn about George Bush Sr. in high school at the age of 35. According to an article in Newsweek, the SEAL who shot bin Laden said he'd need only 9 guys to save Americans in Kabul. Let's go one thing straight. First of all, this isn't some Jason Statham movie where his character is required to be ex-military and now he lives in a remote island in the Southeast Asia and now he needs to be called back as not being a mechanic. With the quickness it took the Taliban to take over, I think they're going to need a little bit more than a few indecisive, middle-of-the-road, Amish-looking people to light some terrorists up like Clark Griswold style. According to a new study of sorts, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, President Biden's job ratings have declined amid the recent COVID surge and the Afghanistan withdrawal, according to a NBC News poll. I love people pretending that they're Tim Russert, dissecting Biden's Afghanistan code decisions when, they're doing it on their Instagram stories. It's like, come on, what the hell? Give this man a fucking break. He's almost 80 years old making decisions, for the country that should have happened in the first place, thanks to a man who should only have been in charge of the tractor pull at your local county fair. Recently, in a surprise event for the former guy, he was booed at a recent rally in the heart of Incest Valley, aka Alabama, after telling his supporters to get vaccinated, which is funny because I bet Trump and at least 2/3 of his supporters there that night couldn't even spell vaccinated. Trump promoting getting the vaccine is worse than any episode of Twilight Zone mixed with an Alfred Hitchcock movie any day of the week. It's just weird. Uncomfortable. Some sports news: baseball legend Miguel Cabrera recorded a historic feat by hitting his 500th home run, becoming the 28th player to do so in MLB history. Two baddest team, the Detroit Lions, are more relevant than Toys R Us in 2022. Get it? Because that's a joke about something that closed a few years ago that most people forgot about, just like the Detroit Tigers. Some sad news for people who get way too close to their siblings. It was announced that the legendary Gigolo band Insane Clown Posse will be embarking on a farewell tour after ICP member Violent J announced he has heart failure, which caused as big of a wave in the news cycle as Mike and Ike splitting up in the candy business a few years ago for promotional purposes. No one cares. In some video game news, Super Mario celebrated a big date as it celebrated 30 years of its North American launch. As this was happening all day, you could hear men and a few women over the age of 35 blow out celebratory cake candles for an event only those who work at GameStop at your local grocery store care about. In some sports news, everyone in New England got excited for, like Karen canceling your favorite show. Cam Newton will be missing some upcoming Patriots practices due to a, quote, misunderstanding regarding COVID protocols, which, really in actuality, I should say, is short for, I don't give a fuck about people and I'm not going to get the vaccine because screw it, why not? Cam Newton is as stupid as the majority of the lobsters are red. So many people in Iran, Texas got COVID-19 that the school district had to shut down, and the city essentially shut down faster than you're walking into a classroom with a sub about to say you actually have to do work when they have a pop quiz. It's kind of sad when you can't be medically staffed. Listen to the Dollar General knockoff of Professor Charles Xavier and named after a country that doesn't allow women to have more rights than some farm animals. Boom. In an act similar to a second grader not getting a sleepover, disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo decries, quote, unfair treatment as he bids farewell. Cuomo crying about being treated unfairly is like taking a math test and you have to use a pencil that instead of erasing just munches your old answer. Honestly, screw Cuomo for thinking he can just leave his dog in the dust like dropping off old clothes at a donation bin on the side of the road by a gas station or park. Yeah, fuck him. And some economic sort of news, Target announced that they will be adding 160 more U.S. locations, 160 more Disney store locations in the U.S. as the holiday season approaches. I can't wait to hear about all the stories about stay-at-home mothers fighting about the shortage of frozen $3 in stores and pulling out weaves. This is probably as stupid as middle-class people believing a man who sells pillows over the phone about political integrity. That was a mega roast. According to the Tulsa World, Selena Gomez says she will never quit making music. In other news, have a good chance to become president of the United States 5 years after college. Selena Gomez hasn't been relevant since she starred on a television show where her mom's biggest movie role was with Dana Carvey in a movie about disguises. As another big roast. In some more sports news, the New Orleans Saints and Caesars Entertainment announced partnership resulting in the stadium now being called Caesars Superdome. Now, whenever you buy a ticket, a man in tow will come by and offer you $5 ready hot pizza every week. Some sad news for female college dropouts who are currently in college. The social media giant OnlyFans has announced that as of October, they will be banning any explicit content, which will set the company up for expected bankruptcy, seeing as that's what 99% of the company is made of when you really look at the whole thing. Some good news for Antifa people. The executive producer for Jeopardy, Michael Richards, has resigned as a successor to Alex Trebek after past graphic podcast interviews resurfaced recently. As said, you have to be to fuck up this bad that the man who was in charge of picking hosts couldn't even pick himself because he wanted to pull a 2010's James Gunn in the world of Cameron's. And finally, in the news, a Belgian woman has been banned. Yeah, you were right. Banned from an Antwerp zoo after having a multi-year affair with the chimpanzee. Officials said that when a chimpanzee would spend all of its time with the woman, that the other monkeys felt that the monkey was not part of the group. You must feel so lonely that even the same species doesn't want to be with you anymore. That's what this past week in the news. Stay with us. I'll be right back. I said right back with our special guest this week, the amazing Adam Bernstein. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nolan Cart Night Show. And I want to tell you this, folks, because there's tons of you out there paying attention to this. When I was coming up with some guests after interviewing, having some friends, coworkers on, so on and so forth on, there are a few people that I wanted to have on, and my next guest was one of them. He is the host of the Rhode Rumble podcast. It is a phenomenal one, to say the least. Don't check it right now. I'll want to stay tuned into this one. But check it out on YouTube. It's amazing. Just released an episode earlier this week. Without further ado, my guest for today's episode is Adam Bernstein. Adam, I thank you for taking the time out to do this.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, how are we doing this as summer ends before we go back to school?
Pretty good. I'm on vacation right now with my family. I'm actually in a beach house in New Jersey right now. I'm originally from Ohio in New York, but can't complain right now. I'm just hanging out and getting ready to move back. I have quite the drive. I'm off campus now this year, so I have quite the drive to prepare for.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about all the pesky FNRAs knocking down your door.
Not anymore. Yep.
Now you got your space, which is enjoyable. I lived on campus for 2 years on not the most enjoyable time both years, but it's a learning experience to say the least. And now I'm living back home, which is much more enjoyable to say the least. It's sort of, I guess, a piggyback onto the last question. Obviously, we're in a giant pandemic, and it's only questionable what's going to be happening this school year. But how are you handling it during this session in it?
It's been quite the year or two, I should say. I'm going into my junior year, so I'm a rising junior, for those that don't know. So coming to URI and then my freshman year kind of getting cut short with COVID was not the way I wanted to end my first year, and then having to do sophomore year in this new environment was definitely a change, but For me, I tried to make the most of it, and
Yeah.
I obviously with the podcast and now Zoom being such a prominent thing to today's society, it really helps out. So, it could be a lot worse, but just gotta power through and make the most of it.
The thing is, that's I work at a summer camp. I've been there the last handful of years, so it's been tough with that in terms of masks and all that stuff. But that is, see, many people don't realize that's the attitude you need to have during this, because yes, it sucks a lot. It fucking sucks. Pardon my French, but it sucks. Obviously, no one wants to be here, especially the people that need to be socially active to survive on the weekends. They need that, or else they keel over. It's just it's something, but obviously we make do what we can. We do stuff like this, to pass the time, because it's really boring, without it.
Absolutely
Obviously,
no. I
obviously,
actually, sorry to cut you off. I actually
uh,
worked at a summer camp as well this summer, so
uh,
I know exactly where you're coming from.
yes,
Yep.
yeah, it's quite the interesting thing. A lot of characters, just like at URI, which will be there hopefully, and hopefully we're in person, and you know Greek life doesn't screw it up again. Are do you what's your prediction? I'm curious your prediction as someone who covers sports for this upcoming, at least this semester.
I really don't know. I mean, I feel like the last 2 years and just really life in general now, it's so unknown what's going to
Yeah,
happen. I'm hoping to get back into the Ryan Center and, of course, on Meade Stadium and all the other beautiful facilities that the university has and cover sports. I commentate for WRIU. I obviously do stuff for Rhode Rumble podcasts, which I have interviews there through Zoom. I've done a little bit with Anchor Sports Network, which student run sports media club on campus. So I'm involved heavily with the sports media major. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think the men's and women's basketball team did announce that the Ryan Center would be filled. They did put out a video saying that fans were going to be back. So that's exciting, at least. Even if I'm not on a couple of broadcasts, I'd love to go to a couple of games. I mean, just to get out and see sports happen.
yeah,
It's still exciting, and I feel like we haven't had that. And to lose a year of our college experiences due to COVID and not be able to go to the arena and
yeah.
feel that environment is definitely a loss. So just to get back in there for as many games as I can, or really we can, would be a treat. But really, it's going to come down to what's going on in the world and what
Yeah.
the university decides.
Well, I mean, I'm happy that they're taking the proper steps to making sure everyone's not being an asshole, and wearing their
Yeah.
masks in buildings and stuff, and not being like other states that will remain nameless. But I have to echo the sentiments there, because last year without basketball, or whatever year it was definitely something that was very hard to not do, because I look forward to them, and obviously sitting in the media section for yourself and others, that's definitely an amazing feeling. But also, sitting in the crowd is something. So I'm hoping that is there, and hopefully the men's team can have a better year, and the football team can have a better year, and the women's team can continue to climb upwards. Curious as well. Prediction for the men's and women's basketball, and then the football team.
Sure. I'm very optimistic with all three of those teams. I'm a little biased being that I go to URI. I'm a
Yeah.
Rhode Island fan. My dad went to the University of Rhode Island. So I'm not born in the state of Rhode Island,
Yeah.
but I like to say I'm born to be at the University of Rhode Island. So
Exactly.
I'm a little bit and essentially Rhode Island born. Um, but I mean, in terms of women's basketball, I'll start with they're really on the up and up. I think what Coach Tammy Reese has done with the program has been absolutely tremendous. They brought in a lot of recruits. One that I cannot remember the name of, but she is, I think, a graduate senior from Seton Hall. I think she's going to be great. They're bringing back a lot of their players that they had last year, which is always good in terms of depth. And I'm expecting them to be good. I mean, I took a look at their schedule. I saw a lot of great matchups against highly credited programs in
Yeah.
Division One women's basketball, and I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to it, especially at the collegiate level. But I think it's something that a lot of people should be paying attention to, because I think this team has the potential to win the Atlantic 10 Conference. They went on a big winning streak last season. I was able to get on a couple of broadcasts for that. again, with COVID, it was so hard
Yeah.
to get into the Ryan Center. But even from the studio in the Memorial Union, I was able to kind of watch and observe and also cover the games.
Yeah.
And
There you go.
I saw a lot of good things about that team. So I definitely think they're going to have a good season. Men's basketball, they're pretty much returning everyone except for Fats Russell. So I look at that as a positive. I think Fats did everything he could. URI, I think it would have been great to have been at the Dayton game last year where he, I think, set the record or broke the record for the most steals in program history, something like that. And they won in double overtime.
Yeah.
That would have been great, but he left everything out on the court. And he was a great Rhody Ram. I would say if Rhode Island would retire or could retire numbers, number one should be up in the rafters. He definitely left a mark, especially in his first 2 years, making the March Madness tournament.
Yeah.
But I still think they're going to have a good year, if not better. They only lost 2 other players due to the transfer portal, and they're bringing in a couple of recruits. They might be redshirting this year, meaning they're not going to play, but they're returning pretty much all of their starters and all of their key bench players. So I think with that being last year, people not knowing what was going to go on with COVID, of course, it's hard to play at the collegiate level and any level with COVID, but with them being more comfortable in the system and really learning Coach David Cox's system, I think they're going to play a lot better. Last year, a big problem for them was they were all a lot of them were incoming students to the University of Rhode Island. There were a lot of transfers. So when there's a lot of incoming players from different schools, you kind of have to learn the program a bit more, get to know the coaches more. And I think not having the fans in attendance definitely hurt. But I'm optimistic. I think this year, again, bringing back most of those players and adding on to that and bringing in even more for depth purposes, I think will make them even better. And then in terms of football, I actually got off to one of the best starts that they had last year. Only 3 games. They were 2-1. They only lost once to Delaware in week 3. And then that was when a lot of the COVID positives started to hit the program. But I think I actually recorded a couple nights ago a Rhody football preseason video with a player on the team. So, and he told me personally that they're looking to have a great season. The schedule looks great. They open up against Bryant next week. I think it's going to be a great year for them. I don't follow it in terms of basketball as much, but I think it's going to be a good year for Rhody football because there are a lot of returning players. They've lost a couple due to graduation, due to transfer portal, injuries, stuff like that. It's so difficult with football. There's so many different positions, but again, I think bringing back a lot of players that they had last year and have had for the last 4, even 5 years, and then again bringing in new players to the program. They have all new coaches that they brought in last year that are coming back again this year. And again, from what we saw, a little bit of taste that we saw last year, I think it's going to be a really good year for them. So we'll see.
Now, is this? Do you think this is a make or break year for both Cox and Fleming, or are they here for the long haul if they don't perform well?
Yeah, Fleming has been with the program for a couple of years now, so I think it's going to be interesting. He might be on the hot seat at the end of the season if they really can't get over that 500 mark or that 500 mark hump. But it's going to be interesting to see because that all comes down to front offices, the athletic director, administrators, of course, Thor Bjorn, who's the athletic director. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. They just brought in a whole new coaching staff. It does seem like they're putting a little bit more money into the football program. They just redid Meade Stadium just a couple of years back. So I do expect this team to be a little bit better. And again, we got a taste of that last year. If everyone can maintain healthy, I think this team's going to be great. It's really tough to tell now. We're going to have to see by the end of the season, by the end of the fall, if he's on the hot seat. And that's really, again, going to come down to what the school decides, what the administrators and athletic administrators decide. That's something that the media can't really determine, or else me, who's a student journalist. In terms of David Cox, they brought him in a couple of years ago, and I think he's overall done a really good job. Minus last year, again, if you can't really blame him because, again, it was a year with circumstances and, again, a year with injuries. That's why I think they're going to be a little bit better, because Fats Russell actually wasn't in the lineup as much last year than a couple of the other players, like Ish Leggett, who was a freshman last year, and he kind of broke out, and I think he'll be even better this year. With him not being in the lineup, and again, with them bringing in new players and having these players kind of mold into better players and improve, we have a lot of seniors now, which is good for veteran leadership. I think this team is only going to go up. Just a couple of years back, we made the March Madness tournament.
Yeah.
So I don't think he would be on the hot seat. Again, I think it would come down to how well they perform. Now, I think if they lose like every conference game, maybe you can consider it. But
Yeah.
I think that both these coaches have quite the run that they've made already at URI. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any of them going in the future at all.
Well, enough for the URI chatter. I want to get your take on, obviously you're from New York, so the Yankees in a little bit, because they're doing pretty well as a Yankees fan myself, which is a very hard thing to do in New England. But through all that stuff, now nitty-gritty stuff, all about the podcast. So for you, you're sitting in your room or dorm room. How does this, concept or, decision to create this podcast come about?
Yeah, sure. So I actually sat down last year, or I'll give you the rundown first. Freshman year, I mentioned I was in the Anchor Sports Network, or I am in the Anchor Sports Network. I was really involved in it freshman year. I actually ended up getting a position as the web manager going to sophomore year. I did that first semester of last year. So I sat down and I decided that I really wanted to, I'm in this major, sports media major. I really wanted to kind of expand what I wanted to do, my skills. I wanted to know how to write, which I do know how to write, but obviously improve my writing skills. I wanted to learn how to commentate. I wanted to podcast. It was all new to me. I came in as any other freshman. I joined this club. They got me set up right away with a podcast, and we would go to Ranger Hall. I did it with my freshman year roommate and a kid who I went to high school with. Unfortunately, I think both of them, or at least one of them, has transferred out of URI. Not really close with either of them anymore. It's just kind of how freshman year works. Yeah. But yeah, and it sort of died down a little bit, but we would go to Ranger Hall every week. And it was difficult to kind of keep up with it. We didn't really have microphones, the right equipment. We had to kind of borrow from the MEC or the center over there in Ranger Hall. And it was just, your typical podcast. We'd cover the relevant topics in sports, what's going on. Last week, the Giants won, whatever, random topics that are just going on in sports. And it was mainly a New York podcast because, like I mentioned, my high school friend was on it with me, and a kid who was my freshman year roommate. He's actually from Connecticut, which is kind of interesting why he was a New York sports fan. Yeah. It's like I feel like I'm meeting more people from Connecticut that are New England sports fans, but I don't know, it changes. But anyways, we would talk sports, New York sports, all that kind of stuff, and it was great, but it kind of didn't really allow me to interview people and get on air and bring in a new guest every week. And part of being a part of the sports media major that I really love is that you can interview people and you can really get to know like someone's path into sports, whether they're an athlete, a coach, or just even a member of media, whether it be a sports anchor on the nightly news station, local stations, whether they're anything, radio talk show hosts, podcast hosts, anything like that. So I really wanted to kind of learn people's stories, and I wanted to improve my interviewing skills. It's definitely something that I felt would go a long way. So I kind of sat down last summer, about a year or so, with a friend of mine. He's an offensive lineman on the football team at URI, Montana Friselli. It was a little difficult for him to keep up with it. Sometimes he'll come on with me and do it, but it's just difficult because being a college athlete, it's so hard to, the time is so valuable with practices and scrimmages and of course the games and training camp. So, I kind of used him. We kind of used each other and bounced off each other. He would help me get some connections within Rhode Island. We quickly established that we wanted it to be Rhode Rumble. And I know most people think of Rhode as the University of Rhode Island, but also could just be the state of Rhode Island. So I thought, athletes from Rhode Island or who are affiliated with the University of Rhode Island, have played there or do play there. Coaches that have coached in the state of Rhode Island at the other colleges located in Rhode Island, because it's a small state, but
Yeah.
it's bigger than a lot of people know. So there's several colleges, couple of coaches there, a couple of athletes there, or even just like I mentioned, media. So people who are on, the local stations in Providence. So
Yeah.
we established that we wanted to kind of use our connections that both he had and I had, him being an athlete, me kind of being someone trying to get into this industry, and just reach out to people. It was a lot of outreach, and we would come up with a script every week, and we would just hop on Zoom and interview. And as time went on, it picked up a little bit, more views. I actually learned the skill of editing quickly, just like that. I think URI provides students with like an Adobe Premiere or something like that. So I quickly just like taught myself in a couple of weeks the skill of just how to edit basic stuff. And then more reps, and every week we would do it. And now I'm just, still reaching out to athletes, still reaching out to coaches and media people. I don't have Mo on as much, only because he's so busy preparing for the season. But, whenever he's available, we'll hop on, we'll do it together. And usually I try and shoot for 30 to 40 minutes long, but sometimes it'll go to an hour. I've had people talk to me for like an hour and a half. And that's just kind of the beauty of it. A lot of people will, really, I've gotten some positive feedback from it. I'll promote it out to, all the social media platforms. I'll share it with my parents like Facebook friends like that. I'll tweet it out to my Twitter followers, share it to our Instagram page that I run. I've kind of just promoted it through all these social media platforms, and it's grown a little bit. And, I'm hoping that it continues to grow. And even if it doesn't, it's something that I really enjoy. And I think, again, someone trying to get into the sports media industry, it'll be a great sort of portfolio or thing to attach to the resume that I could eventually show some jobs or employers down the road. So, I've really enjoyed doing it, and I've made a lot of more connections through it. I think definitely helps. Like I said, I'm not even from Rhode Island, and I'm learning more about the state just from going to the school and doing the podcast. So, it's almost like a second job for me, but I'm always kind of doing it in a way. I'm screen recording clips, putting it on TikTok. Stuff like that. I'm outreach, always emailing people like, hey, I've never met you before, but would you love to come on my podcast?
Exactly.
And, it's taught me how a lot of skills, even like how to face rejection. Some people are not going to respond to you, or some people will set up a Zoom with you and then not join. I stared at myself for an hour on Zoom, waiting for someone to join, and doesn't happen. But you know what? It's a part of it. And it's been a tremendous experience, and I want to continue it for as long as I can, really.
And well, someone's gonna do all the work, and if it's just you gotta do it, and it's gonna help. Because one day, and I say this to the guest I had, and I specifically echoed the statement when I was just doing Friends at first, and I said, listen, one of these days it's gonna pop off and be humongous, and they're gonna look back and say, holy shit, look at this episode, look at this stuff, it's the best. So
I just had my first video, or one of my videos hit like 200 views, which I haven't done yet. And I only have like 80 subscribers, but the other day, like I woke up, my dad was like, hey, the interview with Ishel Amin, who's a fifth year coming in to the basketball program. He's coming to URI, is from Ball State, but I did an interview with him, and that interview just hit 200 views. So, I mean, you just got to keep grinding, and the views will come, and stuff like that will come. But even if it doesn't, or if it takes a while to come, you just got to keep doing it, and eventually it will just happen,
Well, it definitely gives you a good feeling though when it's good and something like that, 80 views or whatever it was, and or even when you get someone on. I mean, you had I'm drawing on the name blank you just had on this week. Who coaches
Tyson Wheeler.
Yes, Tyson Wheeler, one of the probably best basketball players at URI in history. His number's not retired. They haven't retired a number in decades. But even something like that, I mean, a big time person who you were probably, and I'm not saying this, hatefully, but someone you might not run into life in general, but you have them on the show, and it's like, damn, I could, if I can get this guy on, then it's going to push me forward to get the next person. So that's definitely something to commend. But for you though, when you're doing, obviously, you said Montana, who's actually my neighbor, and I went to school with him since like elementary school, so I know
Oh,
quite
cool.
well. But even regardless if it was with him or just yourself, for you, what's your process in terms of who you want to have on the show next or down the line? Is there a certain criteria list that you want to make sure that they check off in order to make sure it's a quality episode, or is it just whoever you're interested in it?
I wouldn't say there's a certain criteria. I mean, obviously something related to sports. It is a
Yeah.
sports podcast, someone that's somewhat affiliated with Rhode Island. I tried to expand a little bit. I did end up getting someone from Barstool Sports actually on the show. Um, in terms of views, it didn't do great, which I can understand because the demographic is Rhode Island based.
Yeah.
But eventually I could see myself possibly expanding it, even though it's not necessarily a Rhode Island guest. I would be lying if I said I didn't have a list, literally a sheet of paper where I, reach out to people. If they respond to me, I'll highlight it, cross it out if the episode is completed. I definitely target people. Also, if I see someone or if I know someone through word of mouth or just because in my free time, I just love to, research sports, specifically Rhode Island sports. Like I mentioned, my dad went to the University of Rhode Island, so he'll tell me a lot about the basketball players, some of the football players that he grew up watching when he was at URI. And I've actually have been connected to a few of them, and I'm trying to reach out to them,
Yeah.
guys in their 40s and 50s. So like it's definitely a grind. I don't look necessarily for like a specific person.
All right.
If I did, I mean, I'd love to have like Lamar Odom or someone
Yeah.
come on the show, but
Yeah.
it's definitely difficult, but you just have to grind. People will respond to you. People will love to help out. If you say, hey, look, I'm just a sports media public relations major from the University of Rhode Island, aspiring journalist, someone looking to get into the sports media industry. I have this podcast. You can just take a couple minutes of your time, stuff like that. Emails are always professional, so I always try and send emails. Sometimes I'll DM on Instagram,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of outreach. I'm not reaching out to a specific person. It's usually someone that I've researched or I think maybe it'll make a good podcast, or I know a little bit about their story and I kind of want to learn more, so I invite them onto the show. It's really just there's no real process to it. It's
Yeah.
more so like reaching out, a lot of outreach really, and then kind of setting up a time and just having them on. That's really it.
How far in advance do you I don't want to say line up, but I guess you could line up guests for a show. Is it just, 1 week, let's say Tyson Will, then the next week you worry about that, or is it, a few people, lined up?
Um, I've had it line up to where it's like 3 weeks in a row. I have one guest, another guest, another guest,
Oh,
and then I'll have like like not a month, but like 2 weeks or so, which feels like a month, where
yeah.
nobody responds to me and I can't get one person. Um, I call it like a dry spell. I really can't get anyone
Yeah.
to come on, but yeah, I mean, usually I just reach out whenever, and it'll take a week for them to set up a time with me. If I reach out today, for instance, um, and I said like Nolan, I'd love to have you come on the show,
Yeah.
kind of like how you had me come on this
Yeah.
show. It took about a week, and then here we are recording now. So it really takes about a week to set up a time, like lock in a time, and then I'll just come up with a script from anywhere from like 10 to 15 questions. I'll do an intro just like you did, and then I'll set up a Zoom link and go from there. And then always remember to record.
Yes.
I've recorded a couple, or not recorded, but I've done a couple where about like 5 or 6 minutes in, I'm like, wait, I didn't record yet. And I'll have to stop the person and be like, all right, we got to record. Forgot to hit the record button, but I try and download it to my computer because again, it goes right into Adobe Premiere.
Yeah.
And then I try and do like a Friday, a Saturday, or Sunday, or sometimes like midweek, like a Wednesday, where people are usually active on social media.
All right.
And they'll click the link, and all I need is a view. That's it.
For you, in terms of, let's say you had whoever the someone transferring from URI to get on the show, and then you have someone like Tyson Wheeler. How important is that for you to continue getting, I don't want to say bigger and more important guests, but guests to have a bigger footprint for your show?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really look at it as like I need a huge guest
Yeah.
next. I mean, I could go with like a guy who's at Bryant next week, who's on the basketball team, who had a good season last year, and then next week I could get someone like Fats Russell or Jeremy Shepard. You know, I it's kind of just based off like who I can get, to be honest.
Yeah.
If someone gets back to me and says, like, for instance, like a football player was like, yeah, I'd love to come on the show, and they're like, hey, I'm a little busy this week. Maybe we can do 2 weeks from now. I'll have them 2 weeks from now. I usually leave it up to the guest and their availability
Yeah.
to set up a time. So I'm not always in control of the order that I posted in or the order that I recorded in. It's more so just when the guest reaches back out to me or gets back to me, and then when they're available, and we'll lock up a time then. I'm not usually looking to get like a big star every single time. Otherwise, I would be at like someone crazy by now, but
Yeah.
really anyone I can get. And then I'm always looking to produce content and
Yeah.
just, have a great guest on who will tell me a story and, about, again, tell me a story about how they got into sports, the story about their career. And that's how I look at these interviews, as a
Okay.
story really about, from start to finish. If you notice, I'll start with high school. Some of them don't even go to URI, but they'll go to high school in Rhode Island, whether that be Bishop Hendricken, which is a
Okay.
great school for athletics, um, or another school in Rhode Island, and then they'll go off and play somewhere else. And I'll
Yeah.
start with high school or wherever, and then I'll end at where they are now. So it's
Okay.
almost like telling a story, but I'm not
Yeah.
always looking for the biggest, best guest I can get. It's more so just like anyone who's available at the moment and reaches back out to me or gets back to me, and then I'll lock up a time with them and we'll go from there.
And I'm sure that there's a large amount of self-control in terms of you have someone on and whether the episode does well or doesn't do as well as the previous one. But I'm sure there's a level of self-control you have to have when you have someone like Tyson Wheeler on or just any other guest on.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, I feel like I definitely have self control with it. Being able to post it whenever.
Yeah.
I always try and give myself enough time in between when I post the previous one and the one that I just recorded.
Yeah.
So I did Tyler Kolick, who is from Cumberland, Rhode Island, went to George Mason, just recently transferred to Marquette, which is a really great basketball program, Wisconsin. I waited about a week or so, I think, to the day. And then I recorded the Tyson Wheeler one just like 4 or 5 days, or like 3 or 4 days after I posted the Tyler Kolick one. And I could have honestly just put it up then, but I tried to give myself enough time, about a week or
Yeah.
two or so, just to kind of let it grow in terms of views, like you said. And then I'll put out the next one. So in that term, yeah, there's a little bit of self-control in that respect. But yeah, I'm really just trying to follow a schedule that I record, wait a week or so. Obviously, I got to edit, I got to look it over, stuff like that, and then post it.
Um, if if I can piggyback off that one now, obviously, the audience is geared towards URI, right? Rhode Island, I should say, in general, Rhode Island sports and media personnel. But for you, when you have people who don't even go to the school, adults who you may not see often, or other people, how how much excitement does it bring to you, or over the moon type of atmosphere for you when someone like I had a friend, and I said, oh, this week on my show, I'm having Adam Bernstein on. He hosts the podcast, and my friend goes, oh yeah, I know the podcast. I've heard it before. It's great. It doesn't go to your eye, but for you, I'm sure it's definitely something where it gives you great pride, not just have the guest on, but for people, tons of people to see it, like it, and view it.
Yeah, it's definitely satisfying. I mean, I can tell you, like, when I post the video that day, like if Tuesday is my posting day, um, I'll like refresh every hour, see how many
Yeah,
views we got. Like, I'll check how many likes I got. I'll tell like I'll text some of my friends like, hey, you don't even have to watch it. Like, just click on it and like it. Like,
yeah,
sometimes I just try and get people to just view it. I always kind of like seeing it go up, and then I always post like a picture of the person I just had on the Instagram account. And I like to see kind of like how the
yeah,
likes do there as well. And I've gotten a lot of like positive feedback, a lot of support from my friends and family. Fortunately, I have a lot of close friends at URI that have enjoyed it. I'm in a fraternity, so a couple of the alumni of the fraternity have even checked it out because I've had some older players on and they've appreciated it a lot. So, I mean, as long as you promote it and really share it on all the social media platforms. I mean, when I tell you like every social media platform, I share the link as a post on LinkedIn every week. I tweet it out at least twice or three times to try and get people to go back to it. Facebook, and I tag my mom and my dad too on Facebook because they have a lot of friends on Facebook.
Props
So
to you for doing
if they
that.
see that they're tagged in it, they'll be like, "Oh, wow, like Adam posted something," and
Yeah.
they'll click on it. And then Instagram, and I mean, I'm constantly promoting it on like every single platform I can, and then I'll even go back a couple weeks, like during the basketball season, for instance, someone may have a big game, like 25 point, let's just say game. And I'll say, hey, I had him on a couple months back. Check out that interview. And I'll tweet out the link. So, I mean, I'm constantly promoting it. And like, yeah, I mean, I definitely get there's definitely satisfaction when I post a video and I'm checking the views every hour or two. Like, how'd I do? How am I doing so far? So, yeah, it's definitely satisfying. Also, like, it's not just about views and like subscribers.
Exactly.
I know it seems like that a little bit, but I just like being a sports media major, again, someone trying to get into the industry.
Yeah.
I'm just so satisfied doing it because like I said, it's like a second job for me because I really just enjoy doing it. Like I really just enjoy having people on. This is not something like in a class I was told to do.
Yeah.
This is something I just set up on my own and I'm doing it and I'm running with it. So, I'm like, I'm going with it and I'm really enjoying it. So, hopefully, again, future employers or anyone down the road will see it, come across it, and it'll either blow up or it'll land me a good job in the industry somewhere. So, that's the goal.
Hey, and another life and another time at URI, business major, promoting. We like to see it, and it's similar to myself. I mean, obviously, my pull is not as large as yours, and I have more a wide spectrum of, or I want to have a large spectrum of different people on. But for me, even I know you had Thor Bjorn on the show a while back, and I was like, damn, this guy. Obviously I know a little bit of him, but I wanted to have him on, and then I emailed him, and we're doing something else, and doing something on the show in a few weeks, and even just getting an email back from him saying, hey, yeah, I'd like to do it. It's definitely something. That's a rewarding feeling because not everyone's the Joe Rogans of the world or people like that who have all these big time connections and they get all these views. So for someone like yourself or mine or any other thing there podcast, even the smallest thing like that is definitely something that's it affects you positively psychologically, that wants you to
Absolutely. I'll put it back off of that, like getting an email back from someone or getting a response back from someone saying, yeah, I'd love to do it. I'll reach out to like URI alumni who work in sports or who are in sports, like even just to share it with them, not always to have them on.
Yeah.
And they'll always be like, wow, what you're doing is great. Like just hearing that is kind of satisfying. I'm connected to a couple of them on LinkedIn, but all the support in general is just it's a feel good moment. But again, like it's just something that I love doing. I'm glad it's been somewhat successful over the last couple months, but I hope to continue to do it, and I hope that eventually it'll grow. And even if it doesn't, like I'm glad that I did it. I've made a couple of great connections. I've heard some great stories, and for as long as I keep doing it, I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah,
so
full steam ahead until the ship sinks.
Absolutely.
For you, and obviously you mentioned it earlier in the recording, but for you, obviously you're not going to get everybody on. There's going to be some people that either just ignore it. I had just someone who I messaged wanted to have on who ran on the URI track and field, and then the cross country team I wanted to have on. I messaged her on Instagram saying, hey, here's the deal, blah blah blah, and just looked at the message, just it said seen and did nothing. That's a little, disheartening. That's a little disheartening, but it happens. You're not, some people are just too busy and they just don't want to do it. For you though, how does that affect your decision making in terms of finding a guest for the next week? Because obviously you may go a week without getting a guest if they don't come on.
I mean, it's definitely frustrating. But I try and use it as motivation. You're going to get rejected from colleges. You're going to get whoever's watching this, even if you're applying to URI or applying to other schools, you're going to get rejected from colleges. You're going to get rejected from jobs someday or even, a partner someday potentially. But rejection is definitely a life skill
Yeah.
that a lot of people need to kind of face. Not everyone is going to be so willing to do it. A lot of people are going to, look at it and, that's it. Some people will set up a Zoom with you. And like I said, you're looking at yourself ready for the recording. You
Yeah.
open the Zoom, an hour goes by. You're like, all right, this is not happening. And then you reach out. Hey, did anything happen? Hope we can set up another time. They don't
Yeah.
respond, stuff happens. I'll tell you a quick story. I was messaging a guy on the 87 Rams basketball team, obviously a great basketball player. 88, they made a run to the Sweet 16. My dad graduated in 87, but is a player that my dad really liked watching in the 1987 URI men's basketball team. We were talking for a couple months. We're still talking. We set up a Zoom twice. The second time, he claimed he tested positive for COVID that day, and that he couldn't come on. A couple months went by. Here we are in the summer. He's switched jobs. He's now a coach. So I'm not going to name drop, but he switched jobs. He's at another school now coaching. I reached out. Hey, just want to reconnect with you, see how you're doing. I know there was a lot of things between the positive test and, of course, the coaching switch, the job change. Congratulations on that, by the way. Just wondering if you'd love to come on. He messaged me back a couple weeks ago and was like, yeah, I'd love to come on. And I said, or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, let me know when you're available. I'd love to have you on. And I've had this script written in my Google Docs for like maybe 6 months. Maybe it feels like since like at least March. I was sitting in, I lived in Brookside. So I would do a lot of the recordings there. But I would sit in Brookside waiting for this guy to join in my suite. And he wouldn't join. And I'm still talking to him. And now I'm a rising junior about to live in Narragansett for the year. So, if I have him on, great. If I don't have him on, whatever. I'm still gonna, to answer your question, I'm still gonna reach out to people. It's, again, rejection's gonna happen. It's a life skill that a lot of people need to face or learn to face. Just keep grinding, keep reaching out to people. People will join. People will see the work that you're doing. Just continue to put in the reps, and if you continue to do it, the results will show eventually. So, don't stop reaching out to people. It also might take a day for people to respond. So I've had people like respond in like a day or two. I've had people respond in like a month, like, hey, I didn't see this message, but yeah, I'd love to come on. But yeah, just continue to reach out. It's gonna happen. Like I said, it's so frustrating when you're sitting there on Zoom and you've had it locked up. I texted my dad, hey, I got this guy coming on. Oh yeah, I know this guy. And then, an hour or two goes by. I'm like, he hasn't joined yet. I texted him. I'll email him, hey, are you still good to do today? And a couple of people, but it happens. I can name like 5 basketball players that have done that to me. A lot of the current basketball players don't love to do it either. Reach out to a lot of them. I don't take it personally. A lot of current athletes are busy, and I don't blame that, especially the current athletes too, because they're they have lives right now, especially playing and stuff like that. Their off season consists of preparing for the season. So it's very difficult to get an athlete on, but someone that went to URI a couple of years ago and was a great athlete, is playing overseas now, or is retired and is now pursuing coaching or something else. They're always great to reach out to, and eventually, you're gonna get responses. So
for you, is there someone that you want to have on, or that you're planning to have on, that's on that bucket list that you're saying, I'm gonna have them on, they're going to be on this show?
The end goal is to get like Lamar Odom, Katina Mobley, all the URI greats on. I have Jimmy Barron, who I've reached out to, been connected to him for a little bit. We've been talking a little bit, but not to the point where I'm like inviting him onto the podcast yet. But we've been communicating a little bit. I reached out to Lamar Odom and Katina Mobley for fun. They haven't seen the messages, but I don't blame them. Guys like that, it would be great. A couple of the guys that I would want to target next, I'd love to have like a couple of the guys who from the Rhode football program who ended up getting drafted or unsigned by a couple of those pro teams in the NFL. That would be great. Really, again, like I said, there's no criteria. I kind of just reach out to anyone anyone at any time, really. Obviously the end goal is to get Lamar Odom, the
Yeah.
top, all the great roadie greats. But I think anyone would love to talk to them. But of course, just keep grinding, and sometimes even getting the smaller guests and that building up will end up leading up to a bigger guest. So yeah, I mean, of course I'd love to get the big guys, but you got to work your way up, and you can't start episode 1 with someone like Coach Cox or Thor Buford, but of course you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, you gotta show some not depth, but not experience, I guess you could say that, but
Dedication.
background. Yeah, dedication, and say, hey, I got these people on, and would you like to do this?
Yeah, I'll even say that. Like in outreach a little bit, I'll be, hey, like, I had your teammate on. I've had a couple of your teammates on. I'll name drop a couple of them. I'd love to have you next. You tell me a little bit about how you got into sports media, or onto the football team or the baseball team, swimming and diving team, whatever it is. I would love to hear your story and how you got involved with it. So I'll name drop eventually, or occasionally, sometimes, like, hey, I had a couple of your teammates, a couple of your colleagues on, and I'd love to have you next. So again, you got to keep grinding, and outreach is definitely key. Just keep doing that.
How far, if I can ask this, how far do you see yourself going with this? And I would think you'd want to try, the rest of your time at URI, but do you see how far do you see this going forward into the future?
The podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, as long as I can. I mean, even if I'm graduated from URI, I'd want to continue to do it. It's so easy. Really, it's just going on Zoom, stuff like this.
Yeah.
This is, a podcast, having a mic in front of your face, having guests on. That's all it takes, really, hitting that record button. There's not a lot of heavy, lifting that really goes into it. It's a lot of just asking questions. And again, I think that's a great life skill. So I'll do it as long as the ship sails, or whatever you said earlier. Yeah. So I'll do it as long as it takes. If a job takes over one day where I have to prioritize that over the podcast, that's some real life shit.
Yeah.
But again, I'll do it as long as it takes. And again, I love doing it. I consider it a hobby now.
Yeah.
It's not something I just look for views. And if I really wanted to get monetized with it, which eventually I want to, I think you need to have like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. A lot of people buy that kind of stuff. They pay for subscribers, stuff like that. I'm not looking to do that. I put no money into the podcast at all. All the editing I do myself. All of the graphics I do sometimes on Canva. All of it is just, you got to do. You just got to do. That's what you got to do. You got to put the reps in. You got to outreach.
Exactly.
And outside of the classes, it's just a little something that keeps you busy. And, I'll do it again as long as it takes for me. And maybe it'll turn into a job. A lot of podcasting has turned into jobs for people. I mean, you're a Yankee fan, so John Boy, John Boy Media, of course. So that was a podcast that turned into a I want to say $1 million company. Is Barstool Sports. They have so many podcasts.
They have one for everything.
And Roadie Barstool right now.
There you go.
I mean, they're probably one of the biggest sports media companies in the world, and they're primarily podcasts and stuff like that, like Part of My Take. So this could potentially get a network could pick it up one day. It could turn into my job one day. You never know, but really just got to keep doing and doing it. And again, I'll do it as long as it takes. I don't have a timeline of when I want to stop doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the mindset you got to have. I mean, for myself, and I frequently say this, and obviously I probably shouldn't say it, regardless of the size of this, when the beginning of the episodes, I usually do, I try to incorporate like a current event type of thing. So I find myself writing it down late at night, or, even at work when I'm doing sign in, sign out, when I have time to myself, finding new stuff to write down, because, I enjoy it as you enjoy doing yourself. So you want to do it as long as you can. Now, if a job gets in the way, then obviously you may have to, put to sleep for a little bit, but it's enjoyable. Well, the
biggest thing I'll say, sorry to interrupt, but the biggest thing I'll say is just, if you really want to do it, just keep doing it. Not that you have to do it, but if you want to do it. I don't have to do it. Like, none of my teachers I've ever had at URI said you had to have a podcast. I've had assignments where it's like, hey, record like a little podcast and then talk about the topic. Like, I've had things like that. But no one told me I had to start a Rhode Island sports podcast. No one told me I had to start a sports podcast. I listened to a lot of podcasts. It was simply just something I wanted to get into. And with a little bit of time, it happened. And I'm going to keep going with it. So just if you want to do it, do it. It's not something you have to do.
Yeah.
I wasn't told I had to do this. It was just something I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
I get so much enjoyment, so much satisfaction out of it. So, yeah.
Well, even with me, I when I was in high school, I tried doing one of these and had a stupid name and stuff like that. And I was doing it because, it was always interesting watching one or listening to one. It's always something like, wow, I could do that probably. We'll see. I have enough stuff to talk about. Then it died down because I was just doing stuff every single day and I was just done with it. And I did this and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try it again. And I was so happy to buy stuff to use and stuff like that and do it every day and make sure I'm nice and quiet and have the best stuff. And it's definitely something that's rewarding, and no one had to tell me to do it, but it's something that you learn a lot of things from. Anyways, the last few things I want to discuss is the top moments list, and I usually don't do this, but I'll end on this. Number one, favorite guest you've had on so far, if you can pick one.
That's tough. I'll tell you one of my favorite moments from an interview. We had Stanford Robinson on, who was a part of those couple of runs that they've made to the March Madness tournament back in 17 and 18. They won the Atlantic 10 Conference and they won the tournament. I think they won the tournament in 17 and went to the March Madness tournament. And they won the Atlantic 10 Conference in 2018 and went to the March Madness tournament. He was a big part of those, big contributor. He was a guard at URI, Stanford Robinson. And I believe in 2018, he had a buzzer beater against Duquesne.
Yeah.
It was in like January or February. And we played it actually before the interview. I put like music behind it and I played the buzzer beater and it kind of faded into the interview. But I was able to kind of ask him like, what was that like hitting a buzzer beater to win the game? And they were on they were nationally ranked that year, I think 24th, and Duquesne wasn't ranked. So if they had lost, they probably wouldn't have been top 25 ranked anymore. Because they were right on the cusp. Yeah. So just asking him, like, what was that like to hit like a buzzer beater in the Ryan Center during a college game, a real collegiate minutes, NCAA minutes, to keep the streak alive and really keep that historic season in the program history alive. Like just asking him that. And I'd say he was probably one of my favorite guests I had on. Very genuine guy.
Yeah.
But just asking him that was probably a great moment. Another guest I would say is Thor Bjorn. You mentioned him. Just, such a down-to-earth guy.
Yeah.
He'll respond to almost every email. He loves to help out every student, whether you're in the media, whether you're just a student at URI, whether you're a student athlete. One thing he said on my podcast was he gives every student athlete on every team, and there's a lot of teams, men's and women, through University of Rhode Island athletics and sports. He gives every person when they commit his phone number, and he says, if you could, or if you need any time, like don't hesitate, reach out, give me a call. And I think that's just such a key thing. He's such a down to earth, genuine guy, which is, I think a great person that should be representing URI Athletics. He's a great person to work with,
exactly,
as our athletic director. So he was probably another great guest that I've had on. There's so many. I can't really pinpoint one that was the best, but those are two just great examples. And I mean, overall, it's been a great run doing it, and I'm going to continue to have even more great guests on. That's the beauty of it. So yeah.
I know you really want to have on Lamar Odom and Katina Mobley, but is there someone besides them that you really want to have on the show that you feel as though is obtainable to get?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, like I have a list. It's not in front of me right now, but I have a list of players. I have a list of people that I've reached out to. I'll reach out to a couple of people, even if they don't respond the first time. I'll reach out again. Can come off a little bit as annoying, but sometimes you have to do it. I'll communicate with someone for a couple weeks, and then a little bit of time will pass by. Like Tyson Wheeler, we were actually communicating for a couple months. Couple months went by, a couple weeks went by. I think he just got busy with the summer. He's been preparing for the season. He has a family, of course, of his own, and he was a great, genuine guy. Again, down to earth, really respectful guy, and was totally welcoming to to coming onto the podcast and helping out a roadie, someone in the roadie
Yeah.
community. He's a roadie alum, so I mean, really, I'm targeting like roadie guests, and I say like URI guests, but I don't have like a big guest. I'd love to have Coach Cox on, or
Yeah.
Coach Flem, even Coach Tammy Reese, the men's, women's basketball teams, and then the men's football or football team at URI. I'd love to have any of those three head coaches on. It's always great getting the opportunity to talk to a head coach.
Yeah.
I mentioned I did a broadcast for WRIU this past year. I think it was against VCU. We lost that game, unfortunately. I did also one against Fordham, but one of the great things was I was actually able to be a part of the press conference.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you weren't able to go into the locker room or into the media room, but they did it through Zoom. So they sent me the Zoom link afterward, and I literally did it in the empty Ryan Center. We were sitting up. Media row was like in the higher sections this year, so I was sitting up top, and I was able to put in my AirPods and ask Coach Cox a question, which was a great opportunity. I this first time I met him. I never actually met him in person. Had a face-to-face interaction with him. Hopefully, I can have that this year. And Coach Reese, I was able to write an article with her for the Anchor Sports Network. I simply just emailed her 10 questions, and it got posted onto the Anchor Sports Network website. Coach Fleming spoke to one of my classes. So I've been connected to a couple of the head coaches. I haven't had the opportunity to really sit down and, have them on my podcast, but it'd be great, just to sit down and talk to a head coach. It's a huge job. It's probably one of the most important jobs in sports.
Yeah.
Or the most important job, being in charge of a team, especially at the collegiate level. But yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to talk to them. I'd love to talk to anyone. Anyone I can have on the podcast is a win, in my opinion. Even if they're a D3 athlete or if they're someone on ESPN. That's the beauty of sports, is that everyone plays a small little role, and being able to sit down and kind of hear their story, even if it's for 25, 30 minutes, 35, 40, whatever minutes, and have them on the show it's a win. It's a success, in my opinion. So again, I don't have a key person to target.
Yeah.
I kind of just go after anyone that I think would be a great fit.
There you go. Now the question, the conversation, the last thing I want to get to, which I've been waiting for the entire time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the New York Yankees, and obviously you're a New Yorker and you're a big time Yankees fan, obviously. And obviously I'm Rhode Island. Should be a Red Sox fan, but like stuff changed in first grade, Adam. But for you, obviously they've won 11 games in a row. They're doing phenomenal. That the season started a little shaky.
Right.
How far do they go into the playoffs? Did they choke at the end like they did last time?
I hope not. I mean, I will say I got to give this team a lot of credit.
Yes.
Just 2 months ago, they were at like 41-41, just about 500. Flash forward about a month and a half, 2 months after the trade deadline. And here we are after the trade deadline, 2 months since that, where I think 22 or 23 games over 500. We're first place of the wild card on an 11-game winning streak. I think it's the first time since 1985 they've had a streak like that. I believe it was 1985. It's incredible. I was at the point a couple of months ago where I wouldn't even watch the games anymore. Oh, they're playing tonight, whatever. If they win, great. Now I make sure to race the TV at 7:05 on Yes Network and watch every game. It's so enjoyable. Whenever your team, whether it's Red Sox, Yankees, anything, whenever your team performs and plays like this, you can't not watch them. How far do I think they'll go? I mean, obviously, I want them to win the World Series. I'll say I want them to win the World Series. I'll say I have them going to the World Series. Every year I have them going to the World Series, even if they're not, most fit to be a World Series team. I like to think of the San Francisco Giants this year. They have like one of the best records in all of baseball, and nobody expected them in the same division as the Dodgers and the Padres to be in first place. So that's the beauty of baseball. It's 162 games. It's a long season. The Mets were actually off to a really good start, and now they're not off to a great start. They kind of trade places with the Yankees in that sense. So they've been battling a couple injuries, and COVID IL stints, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I want them to win the World Series. I think if they can definitely get this wild card spot, just a spot into the playoffs, you got to work with that first. And then, if they could put Garrett Cole, who's their best starter, out there, and he can go 6 to 7 innings strong in the wild card, and then you move on to the next round, the ALDS and the ALCS, and then obviously the World Series. So I think the goal as of right now is just ensuring that we get a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And then once we get to the playoffs, it's just how do we get to the World Series? And then once we're at the World Series, how do we win? So yeah, I'd say I want to get them to the playoffs right now. I don't want to jinx anything.
Yes.
Fingers
Knock on
crossed.
wood.
Knock on wood. But yeah, no, I mean, of course, I want them to go to the World Series.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time.
Yes.
They've won it all, 2009. So
Yes, it's
hopefully they
while.
can get back.
Well, I mean, I think, now I don't watch baseball just a whole lot, only because it's a long game watching it on television compared
Yeah.
to in person. I went to go see him a few weeks ago in New York when they played, who was it? Seattle. And, anyways, but I remember watching them on TV when the whole damn Houston thing happened when they were cheating and stuff, and they made it to the ALCS and that whole series, the divisional round, the wild card, and that I was sweating my fucking armpits off because I hadn't seen this in a while. Obviously, growing up, I really didn't pay attention to sports on television, just not in my focus. But that it was just unbelievable. Girardi's last year, who they shouldn't have let go, but
Right.
whatever. But it was a great. The divisional round was such a great series because they come back and beat Cleveland, and then they have that whole charade with Houston that I don't even want to discuss about. And then obviously it's been rough, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. But Mr. Adam, I want to say sincerely, and this isn't me bullshitting anything, this is me serious. I want to thank you tremendously for doing this with me. Obviously, you're on vacation, so for you to take time out to do this for me for an hour, it means a great deal to me, and I really appreciate it. And as I said in that message, I truly meant that when you were having some, well-known people in the URI world and Rhode Island sports world, it gave me great motivation to, want to, do something just like that and get big name on. So I thank you for doing this. I had a wonderful time, and we're going to have to do this again at some point and discuss when the season of basketball actually starts. So I thank you. Enjoy the rest of your time, and I'm looking forward to another one. And I'll see you soon. Before we go, though, to plug everything that you have, social media, podcast, everything. I'll give you the last few seconds here or minutes to do that.
Sure. First off, Nolan, thank you for having me. It's been great. It's been fun. Definitely gonna do it again. We'll do whatever you want, roadie preseason, whatever you want. I'm definitely open to doing it again. You have my my socials.
Yeah.
Just message me, and we'll go from there. Where you can find me, obviously subscribe to the Rhode Rumble podcast on YouTube. You can find that pretty much in all of my socials. My Twitter is Adam Bernstein 18. My Instagram is the podcast Instagram is Rhode Rumble. Same with the Twitter. My personal Instagram is _Adam Bernstein. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, if you want to check out some of the interviews, definitely subscribe. All the support we can get, Rhode Rumble podcast on YouTube.
Now I say to all you out there, and as I said a lot during this, for the tons and tons of people who check this in, if you enjoyed what you watched and listened to today, because obviously both audio and visual, and I know how much you all enjoyed it, please do myself, Adam, Adam and myself a huge favor of liking this. Smash the hell out of that son of a bitch known as the subscribe button. Follow on the audio platforms, share, heart, all that stuff. Turn post notifications and share, because that tells myself and my guests today that you enjoy this and you want to invest further into this, because I'm trying to blow this thing up to the moon like Dogecoin, as they say. And I'm looking forward to doing this, continue doing this. And in the words of Johnny Carson, the king of late night, I bid you all a heartfelt good night. See you soon.